Awesome. So, I'm Marc Stallion. I'll be interviewing you in the Filmmakers Corner for I.F.B's 4th annual film festival. You can get started by just introducing yourselves and your role in the project and give us the title of your film.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Markowitz. I am the writer, director, editor of A Night in Flames.
And I am Rebecca Grant. I am the associate producer and behind-the-scenes photographer.
Awesome. Yeah. Nice. That's a cool combination. I like hearing the multiple hats. Like, which hat is it? Like, usually hear director, producer, director, editor, or
hey man, small films.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
The title. How did you come about the title?
The title, so it's based, I wrote a feature, and this is kind of a self-contained short from that feature. Okay. The feature is called In Flames, and I always found, so obviously the film takes place over the course of a single night, hence the night, but Holocaust, the word itself, which is kind of what the film is about, comes from, fire, death by fire. And so I always thought that title really stuck with me in terms of that's kind of what it's like. Because the feature, and again, the short also covers the aftermath, kind of what it's like to live with that for the rest of your life and to spend your life living in flames. Yeah. So that's where the title came from.
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful. Did you have the title before the film, or how did the title?
Kinda. Usually, as a writer, I hate titles. They're like the last thing that come to me. It's like you're sitting there in the final draft document, and you click on the title page, and you're like, oh, I got away with not titling this for so long. But in this case, no, I kind of always knew that this would be the title. It always felt very striking to me, and kind of very evocative in the way I think some of the best titles are. Yeah. So I had the title well before I even started.
Yeah, I'm a title before guy. Like I can't write until I have a title.
I have so much respect for you because I sit there at the end and I'm like, Yeah.
I do have that moment though, at the end where I'm just staring at the title and I'm like, if it doesn't hit me more than the script, I don't want it. Right? So it's like I have the title, then I have the script. And then I look at the title again, and I'm like, I'm comparing them.
Sure.
But yeah, it's hard for me to write without the title. But I have a lot of respect for people who can do titles, at the end, like the title come to them.
I think sometimes it would be helpful to have, again, because it's like that kind of guiding light. It's a guiding force as you're writing to have like, you hear about, I forget which, there's some very famous writer who would always have like a postcard, I think on his like typewriter that would have like the theme on it. So every scene that he would write, he would have that kind of like reminder of what the film is really truly about. Yeah. And I think that there's something very much to that. And sometimes I'm very much guilty of reverse engineering it, which kind of causes a lot more work and headaches in the end. So sometimes again, I respect your way.
A little bit of chaos.
I know.
Yeah, we all have a little bit, like, our brains are wired in a way where some things just click and work easier than one way or another.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For you, though, with that, what was one of the more difficult things with completing this project? Like, was it the script itself? Was it production? Was it something, in between? What was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part is always raising the money. That's kind of the standard answer, I will say. We, I did this crowdfunding, and in the middle of it, it was during like one of the rains a couple years ago, and so our like roof collapsed, and so we had like half of our apartment, and I'm like, I don't have the energy to do this, but if I'm not, putting it out there, then no one is. Yeah. So it's always those little kind of ways, but I think it's also finishing it. Being an editor on your own is both a blessing and a curse, because you sit there and you go, okay, you tweak something a little bit, and it's very difficult to finish something and to say okay, I'm done. I'm going to step away. I'm going to let it finish. Yeah. That was a big part of it, and that was quite difficult. Other than there's always little things that'll happen here and there, and production woes. We shot at I.F.B. and the studio caught fire when we were on a test shoot. They saved it. They ran down with fire extinguishers. It was like an electrical fire, a prop in the back, and they were like, so it's always the little unexpected things, and
definitely. You're also wearing interesting hats, right? Like, because most writer-directors are not also editors, and for me personally, I always try to, I know how, I can edit it if I need to, but, and I learned how to, in case I absolutely have to wear that hat as well. But I am very proactive with my editors. You know what I mean? Like I like to sit with them and do the entire process. Like I don't. If you're putting in 100 hours, I'm putting in 100 hours. You know.
Yeah.
But most people don't do that, and that's a very interesting hack for you to actually. Because I haven't actually sat there and edited my own work.
It's I mean, I'm an editor first. That's kind of like
that's
how I
beautiful.
make my living,
Yeah.
and it's hard not to. But you know, it does additionally, again, it comes with a lot of challenges, and I think it's to be successful at it, you really have to be very critical of your own work and be
patient,
very, you know when you've got a moment, when a moment's passed. Because you know, when I see people that edit a lot of their own works, it kind of usually leads it to it feeling very slow or kind of hanging a lot, or you know, and I think I had a lot of really talented editing, you know, mentors and professors that really knowing when to cut and knowing kind of when to keep it going is really important. So I think if, you know, I don't think there's an inherent downside as long as you can be kind of honest with yourself, which is easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, and you're special.
I'll also just say something to that is I'm a photographer, and sometimes when I edit my own work, I lean a certain way. I lean into something, I like a certain style, but maybe it's not the strongest.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we don't have that critical eye when it comes to our own work, and so we also were lucky to have some great people who we shared the film with through the editing process.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there, I've watched every version of the 200 different
the months
long.
Yeah.
I watched every version. Sometimes I would notice a difference, sometimes I wouldn't, because sometimes a change could be so minute.
Yeah.
But also showing it to people who haven't seen it before, or either were on crew or maybe weren't and were completely coming in with a different perspective.
Yeah.
It was so interesting to hear their feedback, and I think because he edited his own work, it was helpful to have some of that outside feedback and collaboration in the editing process as well.
Yeah, you're special. You know why?
Why?
How many editors do you know who's an editor first that are writing and directing content?
Very
Like,
few.
personally,
Very few, yeah.
Very few, right?
Yeah.
You know, I love and I respect editors. Like, I really love editors. Like, I'm a fan of editors. But it's like they don't really write their own material. You know, they're sitting around, they're working on everybody else's work. It's never, you know, it becomes theirs once, you know, it's put in their hands. But not many people are creating their own opportunities in that respect. And I mean, as indie filmmakers, that makes you very special.
It's helpful. It's helpful. I mean, there's a lot of people, you know, I've had a lot of clients be like, there's a lot of people that, like, you know, say that they know how to edit, and really what they mean is they know how to use the software.
Yeah.
And because it is all instincts beyond that.
Yeah.
You know, it's being able to, it's just doing it time and time and knowing the timing of something and knowing, again, when to hang on a moment, when to cut, when to move, and being an indie editor is so helpful because it really helps you know what you need and how you can kind of go about it. I mean, for this film, I mean, I had done so many really scrappy productions, and in a good way, but where it's like you're running around and, well, you can't have production design take away time because then you'd have no set, and you can't take away time from camera and lighting because then you'd have nothing to shoot. And you know, and each of the departments needs their time, and of course, right, fair. But then the people losing out when you're in a rush is the director and the actors. Yeah. And so every decision that I made when going into this was, how do we set ourselves up so that I don't have to be the one to lose time? Yeah. So that we don't have to rush our actors, and we can, you know, if it means a pretty cut back and shot list, like, so be it. I mean, that's part of the reason why we did one location, and, you know, we built it here at I.F.B. and gave ourselves basically 2 days to build the set, because I was like, it has to be done when we're gonna shoot. Like, I can't just, you know, we have to be just ready to go and go.
Just as a note back to the editor thing, he always says that editors are the second writers. And so
I love that.
In a way,
the last writer,
they come in afterwards and take what he's given and kind of craft the story out of it. But sometimes the editing process leaves room for some creative outlet and some changes that maybe even the writer, directors didn't even consider or think of, or like solving problems. Like, problem solving is such a huge thing for editing. And so the fact that he's able to wear all these hats, I think has made him better in each of these areas.
Yeah.
Because he's able to look at his work more critically as a writer and a director, but also as an editor.
Yeah, I just find it's very fascinating to start as the editor. It's like reverse engineering.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, it's like reverse engineering.
Yeah,
like,
well, when I was at SC, you know, they said that, like, you know, when Scorsese taught at NYU, he said you want to learn directing, you learn editing patterns.
Yeah.
So, like, there is a sense of, like, you can really learn, you know, how to tell a story. I mean, like, we all know, like, okay, you get close up, medium, wide is like the most common way to shoot something. But I feel like very few people know why to do that. You know, because what most people do is they do that, and then they look through it and they go, okay, well, I like this line on the close up best, and this line on the wide, and this line on the medium, and it's like, but if you do that, then what use is a close up?
Yeah.
You know, how do you emphasize any moment if you're using your coverage, you know, willy nilly? So yeah, it's definitely very helpful to edit your own stuff, to see kind of what are the problems, and you know, oh, these shots didn't really cut together. Or, you know, even on this film, sometimes you see some shots in the edit and you're like, yeah, I see what we were going for, but we really didn't get there. And that was always kind of tough. And you're like, well, okay, well, you know, we could have gone X number of shots, but you know, it happens, and you cut that out.
We learn
and
something every time we do something.
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
it be through the writing process, through being on set, through the post-production process, like looking at shots that we imagined up front and then seeing it in the final edit, and we're like, okay, well, wish we had the ability to do this better, but now we know for next time how to, like, you know, put that first and focus on those things. So.
Yeah, this is a great conversation, because it's just, and I mean, that's what this interview really is for too. It's just like, it's open conversation and dialogue for indie filmmakers, and to be looking at things from a different perspective. And I think that what you were able to accomplish, and not just with the final product of your project, but with the process of your project and the way that you approach it, you know, from the hats that you have and that you wear. This conversation is extremely interesting to me, because also as a professor, like, I want my students to have these conversations, to understand that, like, your strengths in different areas are what makes you, it enables you to be well-rounded if you allow it to.
Absolutely. You know? I mean, it's a balance between, like, you do have to know a little bit of everything, to know, especially in indie, right? Every director is partially going to be a producer, because it's usually going to be your money.
You have to,
So in a practical sense, like, you have to know, like, how it works, but also, like, it's about finding the right collaborators, right? And like, and really trusting them. I mean, a story that's always stuck with me from film school is, like, the professor was explaining, like, it's kind of like you're driving a bus, right, full of people, and like, it's your job to get to, like, San Francisco, say, and like, you know, some people will be like, oh, I want to stop here, I want to stop there, and you can go. It's your job to figure out, like, okay, yeah, we can make these stops, but ultimately we still got to get to San Francisco, right?
Exactly.
So it's like you gotta have to, you know, guide people, but again, you know, it's like, as an editor, I've been on projects where director go, well, let's move this one frame right, one frame left. And you're like, but, like, what are we doing? Like, what is, like, you know, as an editor, you want to be like, but what is the story? What is the reason? What is the, you know, like, treat me as a collaborator, not someone to just operate the keyboard, right? So, and I think that has to be in everything. You have to trust your collaborators. And again, you can still have a vision, and you can still guide them to what you want the feeling to be, but you're bringing them on for a reason. So listen to them.
To trust them, you know, that, you know, when I'm interviewing editors for projects that I'm working on, one of the things that makes me, like, know that I need to work with them is when they're asking me a shit ton of questions about the story and the intention, right? They're not asking about looks, feels, vibes, colors. Like, they're asking me about the story, and then I feel comfortable. I feel really comfortable, because like, they care to know the story, because they're gonna be, not when I would say editor, like, I don't literally mean like editing the film, but they are going to be the next version of storyteller of this story. They're my co-writer. You know what I mean? And so hats off to editors, and like, the perspective that you come from. I just think that it's fascinating.
It's always really funny, because when I explain what an editor does to people not in film, they're like, isn't that the director's job? You know, and you're like, I mean, that is why, like, you see so many director-editor relationships that go throughout their entire career. You know, directors that work with the same editor time and time and time again, because it is such a personal and kind of deep collaboration. And you know, you're in a room working together for sometimes months on end, and trying to solve, again, not just issues of like, do these shots go together, but like, is the story landing? Are these beats landing? Are we following the characters? I mean, all that stuff is as vital to an editor as like knowing like, okay, you know, when do I cut to a reaction or whatever.
Yeah, so 100%. So, well, thank you for giving this time, and I hope that this conversation is very insightful for a lot of filmmakers and editors out there who's like, man, I want to write, but I don't know if I should.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Just start. That's just like the advice I always give everyone is like, there are so many people that like want to skip to the end, you know, and like, I've had so many people reach out like, how do I get this in front of, you know, Disney? And I'm like, you don't. You make something and you start somewhere, and then the next one will be, you know, you put a little bit more money in, or you know, you get more collaborators, and you build, and you enjoy the process, and you know.
You enable people to trust you.
It's never quick.
It's like building relationships, building ideas, building just like
beautiful
forever.
That's
life.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
A lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your film with I.F.B. for the 4th Annual Film Festival. Thank you for allowing me to share this space with you and ask you all these questions.
Yes, thank you.
For giving this beautiful insight with your unique hats. Like, so thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Copy that, right?